What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the review and discussion for UnOrdinary episode 266. Now, like I mentioned previously, episode 266 and episode 265 actually play off of each other incredibly well. I would say it's kind of like the same. It's kind of like one really big long chapter is how I would describe it. But I still wanted to review them separately just to discuss a few things that, just to discuss the events of the episode separately. Now, like I said before, this episode does play off very well with episode 265. A lot of things, well, not a lot of things, but a few things that were in episode 265 are actually get immediate payoff from that episode. Now, this chapter is pretty long. It is. It's just a setup chapter for what's to come next, and also to set up a little other things that I'm sure will be very big soon as well. But a few things in this episode are immediate payoffs from episode 265. So, but with that being said, let's go ahead and get right into it. So, episode starts off with Cassandra meeting with Vaughn. Now, originally, I thought that she was just there to speak with Remy, Blake, and Ison. Kind of like when Keon showed up and said, "Hey, I want to speak to John. I want to speak to Serafina," like, that kind of thing. And seemingly, since she's here questioning the headmaster instead, I think it's safe to assume that she has some level of authority equal to Keon. We'll get into that later. Now, I thought she was going to have no authority to even challenge him whatsoever or threaten his position, but it's exactly what she actually ends up doing. Now, she mentions that both students and parents have complained about how the school is being ran right now, and my money is possibly it being Zeke and his parents, maybe Cecile. They could also just be, very old complaints that, don't compare to recent events in the school, like, the safe house being set up. It does seem like the school is starting to find a balance now. Granted, of course, this could also be nothing. We could never find out who the parents are or anything, but that's just my thoughts there. Now, Vaughn remains completely composed and calm, saying that the school has maintained prestige and cultivated the most powerful students in recent years, which Cassandra inner monologuing to herself, thinking the whole time with her conversation with Vaughn. She notes that this is exactly what higher-ups want to hear in order to distract from Vaughn's failures. And I could kind of see where she's coming from, but at the same time, she points out that they aren't just looking for power, but they also need students who have a healthy understanding of order and societal structure, which I'm pretty sure just means they need to know who's really at the top and running things, and if you're a low tier, you're fucked. We've seen that before when Remy visited low tier districts, and even Blake did. And also, they don't care about power only, but they kind of do, but they don't want people like John. They want high tiers who have been brought up and raised in the high tier society, who know how to run things, and they want people like Arlo, but Arlo is starting to, on his own, not with no influence from Vaughn, starting to realize maybe this isn't right. Maybe the authorities are kind of fucked up. But more on that later. But yeah, the whole time Vaughn remains completely composed, and he just answers her questions, basically kind of like Serafina did before with the lie detector lady, where Sarah was just avoiding the truth, and the lie detector lady was just like, this girl isn't lying, but Vaughn just kind of plays to his strengths, just keeps control of the situation. Now, I do want to bring up also, before I forget, Cassandra does unfortunately continue the tradition of a character I was excited about to ultimately begin to disappoint me, and I'll touch on this as we continue on right now. So, she then questions him about not letting the staff interfere with student politics, and which he tells her it's because he wants the students to learn on their own, and she says that a line needs to be drawn somewhere, and Vaughn has. Now, for the most part, don't get me wrong, a lot of people probably do think that, I mean, Doc brought it up himself, that he hates that they couldn't interfere sooner, or that they couldn't do anything because of his rules. But at the same time, him not interfering did lead to a lot of the changes that were happening now. And when John did truly get out of hand, which Vaughn felt John truly got out of hand, he did stop. He did tell John and scold him repeatedly that he wasn't allowed to get away with anything further. And, you know, that's not anything new, really. I mean, take it from New Boston. I mean, the school refused to do anything because of John, because of his power level and how strong he was. Now, again, I'm not saying that's right, but it seems like, you know, this is kind of the norm, it seems, because no one really interfered at New Boston. Well, teachers tried to interfere at New Boston. Just no, like, actual punishment was given to John until he beat up half of his class. So yeah. You know, she tells him, like, a line needs to be drawn somewhere, and like I said, Vaughn has drawn that line. She probably doesn't know about it because Vaughn clearly knows that something is fucking up with the authorities, and he doesn't want them near any of his students. Now, that being said, the reasons that she points out are reasons that she shouldn't really bring up. You know, I thought she would bring up a lot more different points, but, like, spoiler alert, she doesn't mention the safe house trip at all, and I think that would have been a much better argument that the thing she's pointing out, the thing that she brings up next, I should say. She should have brought up the safe house because, yeah, like, these students were unsupervised from a faculty member on this trip, and ultimately they were very injured or they were, you know, traumatized and everything. But like I said, he took action against John. He even mentions that students have managed to find balance for them now through their trial and errors. And yeah, like, not everything's perfect, but everyone is starting to come together to try and make the school better. The safe house is here, you know, they're starting to do patrols and make sure that everyone is, you know, safe. Like, no one's being bullied. They're saying, fuck you, Zeke. Now, Cassandra asked really strangely, in my opinion, if disobeying the authorities fits into his agenda, and her first example for this is Ray becoming a vigilante after he graduated from Wellston, after UnOrdinary came out. And, you know, that's just really weird. It's like, if Vaughn, you know, was maybe a teacher of Ray's at Wellston University when Ray was assumably there for the time being, I could see that. But I'm pretty sure that's not the case whatsoever. Maybe Uru will do some review like, oh yeah, you know, Ray talked to Headmaster Vaughn, you know, and, like, you know, Vaughn kind of, like, influenced him a little bit, blah, blah, blah. But for what we know now, like, and how, like, the timeline of events for everything works out, Ray became a vigilante well after he graduated Wellston. You know, during John's second year of school, when Arlo was already king of Wellston, because everyone else was a first year and Ray had graduated at that point, John had read UnOrdinary before it was ever published. Then UnOrdinary got published, you know, everything started happening. It's just really weird that she would bring up Ray becoming a vigilante well after he had left Wellston. Strange. Now, he even tells her that he does not encourage violence, which he doesn't. He does not encourage defiance, and again, he doesn't. She brings up both John and Serafina reading UnOrdinary, and he mentions that Keon has already dealt with that, and he's completely right. Like I said before, she's questioning the headmaster right here. She's not talking to students. She's not, like, you know, a disciplinary person. She should have access to the files. She should have access to the files of the people that she's bringing up, in my opinion. So she should know, hey, like, yeah, Keon has talked about this. And she should know that John's dad is the writer of UnOrdinary, so it makes sense. And maybe I was going to bring up that, she should know that he wrote it for his son, because I'm pretty sure that's in the book. But I'm also willing to bet that a lot of authority members haven't read the book. So I'm not going to hold that against her, actually. I'm not going to hold that one against her. But like I said, she should know that it should be common knowledge to the authorities that John's father is the one who wrote UnOrdinary. Now, Serafina, I can understand. She got a hold of the book under very weird circumstances. And, Vaughn didn't really do anything about it because it wasn't really his job to. He let Keon take care of that. But when Keon was kind of like, hey, I want to bring Serafina to the readjustment facility, Vaughn was like, no, you're not gonna do that to my student. No, get the fuck out of here. Now, she then shows Remy, Blake, and Ison, hey, these students have been doing doing vigilante work. These two specifically, we're pretty sure this guy's helping them. Now, like I said, Vaughn does kind of do a suspicious move, and he does say, hey, those are pretty good disguises. They could be anyone. Now, I could get that. He is clearly covering up. But again, he does not encourage this, because when he found out that Blake was doing vigilante work, he scolded Blake. He punished Blake. He made sure, Blake, don't do this. You put yourself in a lot of danger. The authorities are out for people who are doing this. Again, he doesn't encourage defiance at all. He, when it came to this, he was no, stop this immediately. And again, he did not know about Remy doing it originally. I'm 80% positive that he has never known that Remy was also doing vigilante work until today, most likely. Now, so yeah. The last thing she said, one of the last things, is that she accuses him of covertly radicalizing the top students, and she's labeling him as the common denominator behind all of them. And yeah, I guess you could say he's a common denominator between these students who have been, all kind of going against the authorities. But at the same time, they all went to Woba Boba too, they like that place too. That doesn't mean that, Woba Boba tea, makes people rebel against the authorities. Everyone is rebelling for completely different, and I would say valid reasons. John was traumatized by the authorities. John, he was fucked with mentally because of them. He was failed because of the authorities' inability to do anything when he was a child. They don't care about low tiers. They refuse to do anything. It's kind of funny that, she questions that she says, wanting things to run smoothly in society, when John is a direct product of that. And, like John has said before, when he was getting hurt, no one had ever done anything. The authorities never stepped in until he was a problem, because he was a high tier and they didn't like that. So, with that being said, Serafina is just kind of starting to realize that the authorities aren't really on their side, and they're not. She's noticed they weren't really helping her with getting her ability back or anything. Serafina, kind of has started to realize. Serafina also became pretty cold and dim to the authorities and everything. Remy's hatred of the authorities became because, as far as she's aware, the authorities killed her brother, and she wants answers. They never got back to her about her brother's death, and she's starting to take matters into her own hands. So there's that. Arlo is starting to realize that not everything with the authorities is peaches and gravy like he was brought up to believe. He's starting to lose that faith. He's, it seems like he's starting to want to question them to get some more information, see what's really going on. Blake doesn't necessarily have a gripe with the authorities. Blake doesn't really have a reason to, other than the information that Remy gave him. And also, he did see the authorities aren't taking care of low tier districts. That's not cool. But Blake didn't become a vigilante because he cared about low tier districts. He really didn't. He did sympathize with them, and he is trying to do better with the safe house where he can. But ultimately, his choices for becoming a vigilante stem from wanting to defeat John, wanting to get stronger so he could beat John. So, yeah, And again, covertly radicalizing, again, with Ray. Ray became a vigilante after he graduated from Wellston. It was not possible. Okay, no, I'm not going to say it wasn't possible for Vaughn to radicalize Ray. But again, Ray made the decision to go against the authorities as far as we saw after he graduated. He became a vigilante because UnOrdinary was released after he graduated from Wellston. It's, like I said, it's her reasons are, and again, this could just be completely due to the fact that she knows nothing. For all I know, in the future, Cassandra could find out everything. She could be like, oh my god, I was wrong about Vaughn. I am on the wrong side. I need to help out these guys. She could become an ally for everyone. But, and again, me not liking her now because, you know, she's bringing up really stupid reasons to, like, hold against Vaughn. It could be because she doesn't have all the information. She doesn't, you know. A lot of this stuff is stuff she couldn't possibly know. She should definitely know that why it was completely possible for John to read the book. But, I don't know. Right now, it's just really disappointing to see her. And, you know, it's another character that I was excited to see again. And I was excited because I knew when season 2 came back, I knew she was most likely going to end up being a villain just because she is aligned with the authorities. I just really wasn't excited that, you know, she ended up being a stupid villain. She got the dumbs. So, she does say as she finishes her that after she finishes her investigation of Wellston, it will have a proper headmaster. Now, I am hoping that we see Vaughn go out swinging. I'm hoping we get that gravity ability confirmation now. And also his level, you know, that would be awesome. But it does look like Vaughn is possibly, you know, heading out the door with Wellston. And, you know, it's probably going to be John's uncle, cousin man running the show from here. Now, meanwhile, after that conversation ends off, John and Sarah are walking around, and a few of the non-safe house students notice John, and they have their usual reaction, like, "Oh my God!" Like, "John, don't look at him! Don't look at him!" You know, Seraphine is with him. Don't worry. And he actually seems grateful for it, surprisingly enough. But he mentions, everyone really did not knowing about his situation, and he even says, like, that could have screwed me over big. So, you know, nice to see there. They then head to the safe house and meet with Evie, Dylan, and Ison to play, and I can't make this up, Monopoly. Just complete UnOrdinary Monopoly ripoff. But John looks around as he notices, like, you know, everything getting set up. He notices that no one's afraid of him anymore. And, like, you know, he's, like, looking around, like, no one's glaring at him, no one's keeping an eye on him. And when he realizes that, he, like, gives himself a nice little slight smile. Like I said before, John does care about the safe house. John, like, safe house wasn't his top priority for going on the mission or for going on the trip, but he was grateful that he was, you know, he did want to be a part of this. I'm like, that's what I'm willing to say. Like, he wanted this, you know. He's happy that, like, you know, he doesn't have to worry anymore. It's actually, you know what? It is actually kind of interesting now that this thought came into my head for a second. It's interesting that the John we met first off, Gel John, is starting to finally come back due to John being a cripple again. Because when John first started at Wellston, he didn't, like he said, he never hurted anybody. He never hurt anyone. He didn't want to use his ability. He just, you know, he thought that Wellston would be a better time. And so, you know, he tried to make friends. He just tried to have fun. He just tried to, like, you know, be himself. And now, without his ability, after he's fought for everyone and lost his ability because of it, he is starting to come back to that. And I just realized that. And, you know, that's kind of cool, actually. That is kind of cool. I'm still not 100% on board with this repeat cripple arc, but I just realized that, and, you know, that's a really cool thing, Uru, if that was intentional. So, while they're playing Monopoly, John, you know, because he's the main character, though, he's pretty good at games. He makes a big move, gets a really big lead. But that doesn't matter because while they're playing, Sarah is actually on her phone a lot, and she's like, not really too responsive to the game, but she asks John to cover a turn for her as she heads out for a bit, and she tries making a call, but it doesn't connect. Cut to Wellston fucking University, and again, this chapter went on for so long, but so much information was brought up. We see Caden and Kuyo walking together, talking about an organic chemistry exam that they have coming up. Now, this is pretty interesting because, first off, how the fuck did Sarah know where to find Caden? How did she know that? The reason she knew that is because, looking back at episode 219, when she was walking and meeting up with him, she spotted that he was studying an organic chemistry textbook, and he also had a backpack, and she deduced that he was a university student. So Sarah using the brain. Good job, Sarah. So that was really cool. That was a nice callback. And again, we see Kuyo, who is also apparently taking the same classes as Caden, and they're talking about doing a study session together because Kuyo is struggling with with some of the subjects for their exam. Now, after a very brief moment, Kuyo does notice that, Serafina is wearing a Wellston uniform, a uniform he's very familiar with. And he even asks Caden, like, hey, yo, who is she? But, Caden just completely covers up, like, oh, yeah, this is my cousin. Like, don't worry. Like, I'll like, hey, follow me. Like, I'll see you later, Kuyo. And I mentioned this before. I mentioned this in the reaction. Kuyo doesn't necessarily give off any red flags or anything that shows he's suspicious of Sarah. I've said this before. Uru does that a lot. When someone is thinking about... She did it just the very last episode with Arlo. When, he was very friendly, hey, Cassandra, nice to meet you. Like, thanks, hope you have a great day. But after she left, after he could drop the face with her, he looked back at her. He was thinking about her. He was studying her. He wasn't sure about her. With Kuyo, there wasn't any of that. There was a moment of him just looking in the background at them because, he was just standing there. He was behind them and made sense for him to appear there. But after they had left, after Caden had rushed off, oh yeah, this is my cousin, I'll help her later. There was no him just being that's weird, or suspicious. I know that girl. She's from Wellston. There was none of that. So I think that leads some credits to Kuyo possibly being a good guy, actually being a good vigilante, actually doing it for the people, as opposed to, him possibly being Cassandra's goon or right hand. Now, that would actually be pretty cool. The two students she showed interest in the Ray storyline being the ones to go against her. That'd actually be a pretty cool twist, because I always thought, like I told you guys before, I always thought that, Cassandra had a bigger interest in Ray. And so, but, seeing her kind of just her reaction to him just being like, hey, your student was a vigilante. Kind of blows that out of the water, I feel. But Kuyo was the one next in line back then to become the leader of Wellston. And, maybe he's the one who ends up fighting her and taking her down. Or, him and Blake do it. Who knows? So, like I said, what I do feel is a little bit suspicious is just because of so much stuff that paid off from this episode, is that Kuyo was introduced the chapter immediately after we got, stuff about Cassandra. I think the timing is a little odd there for me personally, but not really much else to say. Cut to the final part in this episode, and it's Layla's lab, office, somewhere where Layla clearly has, her own little setup. She's talking to someone and thanking them for their hard work recently, and when that was happening, when I saw her, what she was saying to the person, I knew immediately who she was talking to. I was like, hold up, I know this motherfucker didn't just show up out of nowhere. I know this motherfucker did not just come back. Now, Kanan teleports in. We see him begin to phase in a little bit. And Layla asks him why he didn't teleport to her door and knock, and he's like, I didn't want anyone to risk anyone seeing her because Sarah's with him. And Sarah, wide-eyed, sees Doc. And Doc's just like, what the hell are you? Why are you here, Serafina? And that's immediate payoff to both. That's immediate payoff to last episode where, they were talking about Doc, finding a better job, but also immediate payoff to Sarah telling herself, like, John's getting his ability back. I don't care what it takes. I'm not going to let John stay a cripple for long. So clearly Sarah is here to talk to Layla about getting John under the treatments as well. They are going to have to, something's going to have to happen. Like I mentioned, they're going to have to figure out something to do it under Spectre's radar. They probably have Doc in their corner now. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't know how much Doc is willing to risk his new job for Layla. We know that he is pretty infatuated with Layla, but how much is he really willing to give up? And I think that's really interesting. Honestly, if Doc does become a villain, that'd be really sad. If Doc is like, I'm not involved with this, I'm not risking my job. Because we don't really know Vaughn's position on everything. We know that he clearly cares about the young students. He cared a lot about John, even after John was doing all that shit. He cared a lot about Serafina when she lost her ability. At the end of the day, Doc does care about the future generation, but he didn't agree with what Vaughn was doing at all. And, it's interesting to see, where is Doc going to go? Where do his loyalties lie? Is he going to see the right and, help out Layla? Or is he going to be like, I'm not a part of this, later. Come back later and he's a villain. I don't know. It's really worrying. It is worrying to think about because, but I think Doc will help out John. I think Doc should help out John. But then again, maybe he won't because it may be something like, oh my god, I can't fucking get away from these kids. But yeah. So, that should be it for this episode. Yeah. That should be it. So, yeah. Like I said, payoff for a lot of parts for episode 265. Cassandra talking to Vaughn. I thought it was going to be a conversation with, Remy, Blake, and Ison, but, no, she was just like, oh, you. And then, stuff about Sarah wanting to get John's ability back, and then also, seeing Kaden and Kuyo again, and also Doc's back. Doc's back in town. So, yeah. All in all, I'd honestly have to give, this episode, give this a level 9. This was a level 9 episode. A lot of stuff paid off from the previous episode. Like I said, these two episodes mesh really well together. And also, there is a lot of good setup for what's to come next and what's to happen in the future, hopefully. So yeah, let me know what you guys thought about this episode down below in the comments, and I hope you guys enjoyed. I certainly did, and, despite my one major gripe right now, UnOrdinary is doing pretty good right now. I am still excited to see what happens next, to read as we go along. So, with all that being said, guys, I hope you have a great day, and I will catch you guys later tonight when you're watching this video, hopefully, later than normal, for the episode 267 reaction. I'm really curious to see what happens next, actually. So, with all that being said, see you guys next time, and as always, see you, Space Cowboy.